I had just finished a late meeting downtown, my heels clicking against the marble lobby floor as I stepped into the warm night air. My phone buzzed twice in my tote. 2 missed calls from my husband, 1 text from my mother-in-law. Don't bother coming back without some respect for this family. I frowned, sliding my key into the lock of our front door, except it didn't fit. I tried again. The key turned halfway, then jammed. That's when I noticed. The lock was new. A slow, almost amused smile tugged at my lips. The woman had actually changed my house locks. My house. The porch light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the polished railings I'd personally chosen. The scent of the jasmine vines I planted myself drifted in the summer air. From inside, muffled voices, hers, sharp and clipped, my husband's, lower, uncomfortable. I rested my hand on the door handle, the cool metal biting against my palm. If this had been years ago, I would have cried. I would have begged. But tonight, I wasn't the same woman she thought I was. She had no idea what I owned, or how much power I had to decide who stayed on this block and who didn't. I took a slow breath, pulled my phone from my bag, and pressed record. She was about to learn the kind of respect money and survival could buy. 5 years ago, I was 25, fresh out of grad school, still believing marriage meant partnership. I'd moved from Seattle to Denver for Ethan, my college sweetheart turned husband. We rented the small 2-story house his parents had generously let us use until we could afford our own place. Back then, I didn't know generosity could come with so many strings. From the start, Linda, my mother-in-law, made it clear I wasn't what she had pictured for her only son. I wasn't from a prestigious family, my career in marketing wasn't stable, and according to her, I spent too much time chasing dreams instead of building a home. One night, I came home from my part-time job at a boutique to find my suitcases by the front door. Linda stood there, arms crossed, lips pursed. "We've decided," she said, though Ethan was nowhere in sight. "It's best you go stay with, well, whoever will take you. This isn't working." The words hit like a slap. My chest tightened, my hands trembled as I reached for my coat. "Ethan knows about this?" I asked, my voice breaking. Her shrug was cold. "He'll understand in time. Men need wives who know their place." I left that night with nothing but a duffel bag and a single box of my things. At my lowest, I stayed with my grandmother in her tiny bungalow on the outskirts of the city. She was the one who handed me a small, antique brass key on a chain. "Not all locks are meant to keep you out," she said, pressing it into my palm. "Some remind you to build doors of your own." Those words stayed with me. I wore that key every day, not because it opened anything physical, but because it unlocked something in me. That winter, I made a decision. I would never again depend on anyone for a roof over my head. I would work until the only keys that mattered were mine, and maybe, someday, a whole set of them. The first months away from Ethan's family were brutal. I picked up freelance marketing projects from anyone who would take a chance on me: coffee shop owners, Etsy sellers, a friend's cousin trying to launch a landscaping business. During the day, I worked at a cramped co-working space downtown. At night, I sat cross-legged on my grandmother's sagging couch, studying property investment blogs and watching free webinars until my eyes burned. I drank instant coffee like it was oxygen and lived on peanut butter sandwiches to save money. The turning point came when I met Valerie, a sharp, silver-haired real estate broker with a laugh that filled any room. I'd been hired to design her agency's social media campaign. By the third meeting, she pulled me aside. "You have a knack for spotting value where others don't," she said, flipping through my mock-up for a fixer-upper listing. "Ever thought about buying instead of selling?" Buying? I could barely afford groceries. But Valerie saw something in me I hadn't dared to see in myself. She offered to mentor me, teach me the ropes of finding undervalued properties, negotiating, and flipping them for profit. I took the leap. My first purchase was a rundown 1-bedroom in a part of town most people avoided. The walls were peeling, the plumbing leaked, and the carpet smelled like old cigarettes. I spent weekends ripping up flooring with my bare hands, watching YouTube tutorials on tile installation, and painting until midnight. 3 months later, I sold it for nearly double what I'd paid. One deal led to another. I learned to see not just houses, but potential. The way sunlight hit a front porch in the morning, the old oak tree in a neglected yard, the bones of a kitchen begging for modern cabinets. Each flip brought in more profit, and I reinvested every penny. Within 3 years, I owned 6 rental units, all under LLCs so no one, especially Linda, could connect them to me. By year 4, I'd acquired the entire block where her precious son and she still lived. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every time I drove down that street, I'd glance at the row of houses, each one technically mine, and keep driving unseen. I didn't flaunt it on social media. To my in-laws, I was just scraping by in marketing. To the rest of the world, I was a quiet success story with a growing portfolio. But in the privacy of my own home, a sleek, renovated craftsman with white oak floors and a kitchen I designed from scratch, I'd open my safe and run my fingers over the heavy ring of master keys. Each one was proof. Proof that I had built my own doors. Proof that no one could lock me out again. And still, I waited. I waited for the moment when the truth would matter most. The day Linda changed my locks, I didn't rush. I took my time walking up the front steps, phone in hand, recording the gleam of the new hardware she'd installed. Through the frosted glass, I could see her silhouette, one hand on her hip, the other clutching a mug. When she opened the door, her smile was tight, almost satisfied. "Didn't expect you back so soon," she said, leaning against the frame. "We've decided it's best if you all find somewhere else to stay for a while. Give Ethan some space." I tilted my head. "We." "Ethan agrees," she said quickly, though her eyes flickered. "You've been so busy with your little marketing projects. I thought I'd help you start fresh." My gaze swept past her into the living room. It looked exactly the same, except for the new rugs and a vase of fresh lilies, her favorite. My furniture, my art on the walls, but her handprints were all over it. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the hardwood. "Linda, you do realize this is my house?" Her laugh was short and humorless. "Sweetheart, this is Ethan's family home. It's been in our name for decades." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were neatly stacked copies of property deeds, not just for this house, but for every address on the block. Her smirk faded as I handed her the top page. "This," I said softly, "is the deed to this property. My name is the only one on it. The mortgage was paid off last year." She blinked, then glanced at the next page. And the next. Her brow furrowed deeper with each flip. What is this?" "Those," I said, "are the rest of the houses on this street. I own them all. The white colonial at the corner?
Mine.
The blue duplex across the road?
Mine.
Even that little brick bungalow you always said was an eyesore? Also mine." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's not possible." "It is," I said, stepping closer. "While you were telling me to know my place, I was building it. Brick by brick, deed by deed. And now, this is my place. All of it." From the hallway, Ethan appeared, his face pale. "Is this true?" he asked, looking between us. I didn't break eye contact with Linda. Every word. Silence settled in, thick and uncomfortable. Linda's fingers tightened around the papers.
Her voice was smaller now.
I didn't know. "That's the thing about people like you," I said quietly. "You never ask. You just assume." I walked to the center of the room, letting her take in the details she'd never noticed. The restored crown molding, the refinished floors, the way the afternoon light poured through the windows I'd personally had replaced. Every corner whispered of the choices I'd made, the work I'd done. "You changed my locks," I said, turning back to her. "But you can't lock me out of what I built. This isn't just a house, Linda. This entire block is mine. And the only person who decides who stays is me." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She stood there, papers trembling in her hands, the weight of the truth sinking in. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small in front of her. I didn't feel like the girl with a duffel bag and nowhere to go. I felt like the woman who had rewritten the rules. And from the look in her eyes, she finally understood that. I let the silence stretch, the kind that forces people to sit with the truth. Linda's knuckles were white around the stack of deeds. Ethan stood frozen, his gaze darting between us like he'd stumbled into a courtroom he didn't know existed. "Here's the thing," I said, setting my bag on the entry table. "I'm not here to humiliate you, Linda. I'm here to set terms. If you want to be part of my life, our life, you follow them. Otherwise, the only conversations we'll have will be through a property manager." Her eyes narrowed. "Terms?" I nodded. 1. You respect my marriage. That means no more undermining me to Ethan, no more surprise visits, and definitely no more lock changing. Her lips pressed thin, but she didn't interrupt. 2. You speak to me and about me with the same respect you expect from others. That includes in front of friends, neighbors, and especially your grandchildren if that day comes. I caught the flicker in Ethan's eyes at that last line. 3. I continued. You drop the constant criticism. If you can't offer support, you keep quiet. I don't need your approval, but I won't tolerate your sabotage. Linda swallowed hard. And if I don't agree, then you'll need to move, I said plainly. Your lease is up next month, and yes, I'm the one who decides whether it renews. Her face went pale. You wouldn't. I would, I said, my tone calm. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. I spent years being treated like I was disposable. I won't go back to that. Ethan finally spoke. Maybe we should try it her way, Mom. The words seemed to cost him, but they landed. Linda glanced at him, then back at me. For a long moment, she said nothing, just exhaled slowly, like she was weighing a lifetime of habits against the sudden risk of losing everything familiar. Fine, she said at last, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I'll try. That's all I'm asking, I replied. Effort, respect, and the understanding that the balance has shifted. I'm not the girl you thought you could push out. I'm the woman who can decide whether you stay. I took the papers back from her, slid them neatly into my envelope, and tucked it into my bag. Oh, and Linda? She met my eyes warily. The locks? I'm keeping them. Not because I'm afraid of being locked out, but because I want a reminder. A reminder of the day you learned whose keys these really are. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stepped aside without another word as I walked past her, my heels sharp against the wood. The weeks after that conversation were different. Linda didn't transform overnight. No one does. But the edge in her voice softened. She stopped making little digs at dinner. She even started asking questions about my work, though they came out awkward and halting. Ethan seemed lighter, too. For the first time in years, we could talk without feeling like there was a shadow hanging over us. I didn't pretend things were perfect. Old wounds don't close just because someone apologizes, and Linda hadn't, not yet. But the balance had shifted. She knew where the boundaries were, and she knew I wasn't afraid to enforce them. One afternoon, I walked down the street, my street, the winter sun catching on the rows of houses I now owned. Kids played hopscotch on the sidewalk, a couple was trimming their rose bushes, and somewhere, a dog barked behind a white picket fence. I passed the bungalow where my grandmother used to live, the same one where I'd slept on her couch and clutched the brass key she'd given me. That little house wasn't mine anymore. I'd sold it years ago to a young couple just starting out, but the memory of her words stayed with me. Not all locks are meant to keep you out. Some remind you to build doors of your own. That evening, I sat on my porch, the original lock Linda had installed now framed in a shadow box beside my front door. It wasn't there as a trophy. It was a marker, a chapter heading in the story of how I'd gone from having no place at all to owning every place that mattered. When the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I turned the antique brass key pendant over in my palm. The metal was warm from my skin, its edges smooth from years of wear. I smiled, not because of the power or the property, but because of the woman I'd become. Strong enough to stand alone, wise enough to set boundaries, and graceful enough to leave the door open for those willing to walk through with respect. Some people think success is measured in money, or titles, or the size of the house you live in. For me, it's measured in keys, The ones you earn, the ones you keep, and the ones you never have to hand over again. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. No one would ever lock me out of my own life again.